Here we have created a data layer on our desktop that allows us to um, query the database, right, programmatically. But more interesting would be for being able to share this information with anyone out there, right, that wants to access our data, right? Perhaps we can give even more value to the data that we have been accumulating for several years if we share with our partners, that we share with other folks. In particular, let's try sharing with any UI client that might want to display this content. Okay, so let's see how we could do that. So one way to share data is to use the idea of using web services. We'll go into much more detail about web services in the next lecture. Here, let's just use a very simple idea, right? We would like to be able to map a URL request, right? And then that URL request then provide data to anybody who wants that data, right? So let's do that. So first, to be able to do that, we're going to need an actual HTTP server running that can answer to these URL requests, right? So let's do that. Let's create a server. Let's create a JavaScript server, which is server.js right there. And so how do we create a server to display some of this data? So to do this, we're going to use one of Node.js's more popular libraries for creating simple HTTP servers, right? And it's Express.js, right? Express.js is one of the more popular libraries to share data with other folks. Right, so let's do that. Here we have a couple examples that we can just copy and paste. Let's grab it right there. Let's grab that. Right, I'm just going to paste it in here. So what this is doing is that is loading the Express library, instantiating it, and then it's mapping this URL, incoming URL, and it's sending back this response, hello world. Okay, so this is the most simplest hello world example in Express that creates a very simple 3-line HTTP server, and then it listens for incoming requests at port 3000. So if we run this, let's see, let's create a run configuration here. Let's create a new Node.js run configuration. So it's going to run Node on this directory on this file we just created, server.js. We'll say OK. And if we run it, there it is. It's running. Right? We can now go to localhost at 3000, and it comes back with hello world. Right? So this, right, is the simplest, mapping of a URL, the slash, the root, right, mapped to a function that executes on the server, and the only thing that it's doing is just responding with hello world. We can map it to whatever we want. So this would be whatever we want, right? And so that if we rerun this, and yes, we want to restart, right? Notice that if I refresh this, it's going to complain. It says, oh, there's nothing mapped there, right? There's nothing mapped to what? There's nothing mapped there. There's nothing mapped to whatever. There's nothing mapped to we. But there is something mapped to whatever we want, right? And it's responding with that text. Yes? Everybody okay? Just with 3 lines of code, very easy to map any URL, right, to any data. In this case, it's just plain text. But it doesn't have to be text. This could be just JSON data. This could be JSON data. Right, this could say, hello from the server. Okay? And if we restart the server, and we do it again, notice that the browser has parsed this correctly as JSON. It is a JSON with this attribute, with this value, right? And I can now do something with this on the client side. In particular, what we'd like to be able to do is use that data we just created, right? That's in the database. So let's do that. We can load the model that this app here, right? This app, we should move all these maps here, these routing mechanisms, let's put it inside our application here. We'd like to be able to, from here, listen for incoming requests, and if you want to display all the employees, well, I'll map an API, right, call to list all the employees. Yes, let's do that. Let's do that. So the way we mapped it was to use, we are using the app instance here. See that? Right, that is an instance of the Express library right there. Okay, and then the syntax is that we say app, we say what HTTP method we want to answer. We're receiving a GET. We are responding to a GET event. We're parsing the URL to see if it matches this, and if it's so, we execute the following function, right? And the function receives two arguments. One is the request object, right? It is coming from the client. This tells me everything about the client, their IP address, the timestamp of when the request occurred, any cookies that they might be providing, any HTTP headers that they're providing, any body that is part of the HTTP request that is coming in, any parameters, any query strings, everything that comes from the client. And it also provides a response object. This allows the server to respond, to send something back, right, to the client, send something data back, okay? All right, so we want to do the same thing. We want to do something same thing. What we're going to do is that we're going to put all our implementation inside of this app.js. All right, let's do that. And oops, where's this? So we're going to put all our logic inside of app.js. And what we're going to do is that we're going to require app.js because that's where our implementation is. Right? It's under server. Oops. Oh. We're going to load it under server, and it's under app.js. There it is, right? And we're going to pass it. We're going to pass it app, an instance of app, right? Here in app.js, we need to receive that instance, right? So to do that, we're gonna put this all inside of a function. This whole thing we're gonna put inside of a function, right? So all this we're gonna put it inside of a function, right? And then we're going to export this so that it can be actually required from server.js, right? So we're gonna do module that exports equals function. It will receive as argument whatever we're being passed from the server, the app. Okay. Now that we have the app, we can start mapping things, right? We can say if there's an incoming request that starts with an API, and we're asking for all the employees. I'm going to find all employees. I'm going to call this function. And here's the function. Function, find all employees, which is this code right here. You see that? Right? We just we mapped a URL to execute our local find all employees, which is using the employee models find all employees from the database. Yes? Okay. Yet another level of abstraction. There's several layers of abstraction, right? MongoDB is a layer of abstraction that stores JSON to a file system. Yes? And it makes you think about the data in terms of collections of objects. That's a layer of abstraction. There are no objects. Right? It's just zeros and ones. That's all there is, right? On top of that, there's Mongoose. Mongoose is on top of MongoDB, right? That's another layer of abstraction. Then we put a model on top of that, right? We created a model, the employee model.server. That's another layer of abstraction. And on top of that, we are creating an API call, right, that allows us to access all this data from way outside. Anybody who has a URL, okay? So this receives a request and response. So we could, instead of responding to the console, we could say response, send back the employees, right? Send back the employees if they ask for this, right? So let's try it out. Let's try it out. So now here, instead of whatever we want, if we use this mapping right here, notice what we have here. Look at that. We have the array of the data, right? But now from a browser. So anybody in the world, if they know our IP address, if they know our port, if they use this API, right, this URL, they can access our data that is stored in our local database. Yes? Or a database that could, well be running halfway across the world. Right? We've exposed our data, and so anybody out there can integrate with their own processes. Right? Very, very exciting. Right? This idea of exposing this data for others to use is what we refer to as a web service. Okay, wrapping up and mapping it to a URL that is available anywhere in the world. Right? Everybody okay? Right. All right. So in particular, we would like to display this a little prettier, right? Not just JSON like this, just like raw JSON. Ideally, we would like to display this perhaps in a user interface, right? So let's explore displaying this using one of the more popular JavaScript libraries out there, which is Angular 4. Okay. All right. So let's try and do that next.